right, so some pretty big news for the Sharks came out today that Martin Jones, longtime goaltender for the Sharks for 6 years actually, would be placed on waivers, meaning, his contract would be bought out by the Sharks and, he's never going to play a game in teal. Again, which is a little bittersweet for me because, we had so many great memories with Jones. I mean, unfortunately, it didn't end the way it should have, in most fortunate way, but, you know, we had a lot of good times with Jones. He took the Sharks to the first Stanley Cup appearance in franchise history. Unfortunately, not a win, but it's still a big part of our history. And honestly, I think second-handedly he got me into the Sharks because around the time that he was getting good, it's when the time I got into them. So I think I really respect what he was able to do, and it's sad that he wasn't able to really finish things off on a high note. But this was kind of expected, this buyout. So obviously, Jones kind of notoriously signed a really large contract with the Sharks. They signed him to a 6-year, $34.5 million contract in 2017, which unfortunately wasn't the best choice with hindsight because, Jones these past 2 years really hasn't been the same Martin Jones that we saw towards his, beginning of his tenure with the Sharks. And he really had a lot of potential. I think, I've heard this many times before, but he really kind of needs a change of scenery. I think that would help him thrive. I think, the Sharks maybe weren't the best fit in the grand scheme of things, but I think I definitely respect everything Martin Jones was able to do. And albeit, I think also, a lot of the games he lost, more recently, because that's when the Sharks kind of went on the decline, were not necessarily his fault all the time. I think I kind of said over and over in all 56 of my Sharks recaps last year that, when the ones he played, that a lot of the Sharks losses where Martin Jones was goaltender, it wasn't really his fault all the time. And I think, it just maybe wasn't the best fit with the Sharks game plan. And obviously, the Sharks are pretty high right now on getting, Adin Hill. I think that was a big priority for them. I think they're happy about getting Hill. They obviously see something in him that they don't see in Jones. So maybe that gives me a little bit optimistic about what we could do with Adin Hill. But it's a little bit sad. Obviously, getting to the Stanley Cup with Martin Jones, and he pretty much led us there, really playing good the whole way through. It's a little bit sad. I part of me feels like, I wish he could have, stayed on us longer. But in the same way, last year was tough. You look at 2021, the season, and, he ultimately was 15 and 13 in terms of his record. So he had, 28 credited games in terms of wins and losses. Save percentage was .896. It's actually been .896 for the past 3 years. And, obviously 6 seasons with the Sharks. He started out his career with the Los Angeles Kings, actually won a Stanley Cup behind Jonathan Quick. But, it kind of started to decline over time. You look at all 6 of his Sharks seasons, he started out really strong. That first season on the Sharks, able to go to a Stanley Cup, and then, again and again, he just kind of couldn't get back into that rhythm. And he started 60 playoff games for San Jose, but unfortunately, it just didn't come out the way we wanted to. And I think the Sharks right now are kind of building around getting goaltenders, solid ones. And I think with Jones, it's just not really possible. And on the flip side of things, the Marc-Andre Fleury was traded to the Blackhawks. Like, who saw that coming? And that is just an example of how goaltenders can be moved around. And, honestly, that's much different, though, because Fleury is one of the greatest goaltenders, a Vezina winner. And that was a really interesting trade. Obviously not related to this, but that does affect the Sharks because the Knights are a big rival. And, I think Fleury to the Blackhawks is just so weird. And, I mean, the fact that the Knights got practically nothing in return is interesting, too. But I think this is a big year for the Sharks, showing we've moved on from Jones. We have a new goaltender. We have a bright young star, possibly able to play William Eklund if he's NHL ready. And I think the Sharks kind of needed to do this. The buyout was kind of necessary, although, ultimately it kind of hurt us with, the way things went. 6-year contract is risky. that's an understatement with in hockey and a lot of different sports, but in hockey in particular, because goaltenders can shift from being great to average to mediocre in a matter of a few seasons, and unfortunately, that's how it went for Jones. I mean, I wish it could have been different. And reported a couple hours ago, the Washington Capitals have shown interest. So maybe that change of scenery will be good for Jones. I'm rooting for him. The guy that really turned our franchise around, it was Jones. Although that Sharks team was great in 2016, the Cup run. Martin Jones deserves a lot of credit, and he really. I said this once, but he kind of got me into the Sharks because he helped bring the Sharks to the national stage, and I that's around the time I was becoming a big fan of the Sharks. And so for Martin Jones, thank you so much for putting the franchise on this stage for this time period. And unfortunately, these past 2 seasons were dismal, and we didn't make the playoffs, but it just went to show. It just showed that maybe he wasn't the right fit, and that's okay because that happens with a lot of different guys. And so yeah. Anyways, a pretty decent video on just what happened with Martin Jones, and I seriously think that you put him on any other team. God forbid it be the Vegas Golden Knights, but I think if you put him on any other team, he's gonna do good because Martin Jones is just the type of guy that needs a setting where he can be the superstar. And I think, as a goalie, you might not get that everywhere, but I think he needs that. And so I think hopefully he gets that. I'm rooting for him. But yeah, thank you to Martin Jones for taking us to the Cup. Although it wasn't a winner, it really helped our franchise's history. And so, yeah, anyways, that's going to do it. Martin Jones will be going off the Sharks. He's going to be placed on waiver. They're buying out that 6-year contract. There's 3 years remaining on it because, obviously 2017 to now, to last season was 3 years because, the whole buyout thing. But yeah, anyways, that's going to do it. And see you guys later. Go Sharks.